The sun was rising slowly over the quiet desert, spreading soft orange light across the wide land. The wind moved gently through the dry grass, carrying with it the smell of dust, sage, and faraway rain. In this lonely place lived a man named Ethan Cole, known to everyone as the Lone Rancher. He lived alone on a small piece of land, far from towns, noise, and busy roads. People said he preferred silence over company, and the land over comfort. Ethan woke up early every day, even before the birds started to sing. He walked out of his small wooden house, stretched his arms, and looked at the sky. The day always began the same way for him, calm, slow, and peaceful. But this day was not going to be like the others. Ethan had lived on the ranch for years. His father built the house long ago, and Ethan stayed after his parents passed away. He liked the simple life, looking after his horses, repairing fences, gathering water from the nearby stream, and sometimes riding for hours just to feel the open wind. But there was one thing he didn't like: the stories people told about the Apache lands nearby. Travelers spoke with fear, saying strange things happened in those hills. Some talked about shadows that moved like giants, and some claimed they heard loud footsteps echoing at night. Ethan didn't believe most stories, but still, he stayed on his side of the land. That morning, Ethan saddled his horse, Dusty, because he needed to check the far edge of his territory. A storm had passed 2 nights earlier, and storms in the desert often caused more damage than expected. Fences fell, animals got scared and ran off, and sometimes the ground shifted in strange ways. As he rode across the open land, he noticed something unusual. The ground was marked with huge footprints, much larger than any animal he knew. He stopped the horse, climbed down, and bent to look closer. The prints were deep, like someone heavy had walked there, and they stretched far into the distance toward the Apache hills. Ethan scratched his head. He had lived around wild animals long enough to know these prints were not from a bear or bison. They looked almost like human footprints, but no human had feet that big. He stood quietly for a moment, listening to the wind. Everything was silent, almost too silent. He mounted his horse again and followed the tracks slowly. His heart beat a little faster, not from fear but from curiosity. Ethan was not a man who ran away from strange things. Instead, he liked to understand them. The tracks led him deeper into the hills, closer to the land where few dared to go. The hills grew taller, covered in bushes and reddish stones. The air felt different here, heavier, thicker. Ethan pulled Dusty to a stop when he saw something ahead. A group of tall trees stood in a circle, and in the center, there seemed to be movement. At first, Ethan thought it was an animal. But when the figure stepped into the light, he felt his breath catch. It was a girl, but unlike any girl he had ever seen. She was tall, much taller than him, and her presence felt strong, like she belonged to the land itself. Her hair was long and dark, blowing lightly in the wind. Her eyes were sharp and watchful, as if she had seen everything before he arrived. She was not just tall, she had the height and strength of someone people might call a giant. She wore traditional Apache clothing, decorated with beads and patterns that told stories Ethan couldn't understand. Around her neck hung a small necklace with a stone shaped like a bird. Ethan froze. He didn't know whether to move forward or slowly back away. The girl turned her head and looked directly at him. Her gaze was powerful but not angry. Instead, she seemed surprised to see him there. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved quietly through the trees. Dusty shifted his feet nervously, sensing Ethan's tension. Finally, the girl stepped closer, and her voice broke the silence. It was calm, deep, and steady. "You followed the tracks." Ethan swallowed hard. "Yes," he said. I didn't mean to trespass. I just wanted to know what made them." The girl raised an eyebrow. "And now that you know it was me, what will you do?" Ethan didn't know what to say. He wasn't the kind of man who lied or pretended to be brave. He took a slow breath and answered honestly. I Don't know yet. The girl studied him with quiet interest. She didn't look threatening, but she had the kind of strength that made him understand she could defend herself easily. Still, something in her expression seemed gentle, almost curious. "You are the rancher who lives alone," she said. "My people have watched you for a long time. You walk the land with respect." Ethan blinked in surprise. "You know who I am?" She nodded. "We know many things." He didn't know what to do with that information. But before he could respond, the ground trembled faintly beneath them. Birds flew suddenly from the trees as if scared. The girl turned sharply toward the deeper part of the hills. "You should not be here today," she said quickly. "Something is coming." Ethan felt the hairs on his arms rise. "What do you mean? What's coming?" But the girl didn't answer. She stepped beside him, looking toward the direction he had come from. "You must return to your ranch. Now." Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to run away blindly. "Why? What danger?" The girl looked at him with a seriousness that made his stomach tighten. "The storm changed the land," she said. "And when the land changes, old things wake up." He didn't fully understand, but the urgency in her voice made him trust her instinct. He gripped Dusty's reins. "Will you be safe?" Ethan asked. The girl gave a small, calm nod. "I know these hills. Go. And do not follow the tracks again." Ethan nodded slowly. He didn't want to leave, but he knew she wasn't giving him a choice. As he rode away, he kept looking back. The girl stood tall and silent, watching him until he disappeared down the trail. All the way home, Ethan felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Who was she? Why was she so tall? And what danger had she sensed? One thing was certain: his quiet, peaceful life had changed forever. And this was only the beginning. Ethan reached his ranch just before the sun dipped behind the hills. The light was soft and golden, but his mind was far from calm. The meeting with the giant Apache girl stayed fresh in his thoughts. Every moment replayed in his head: her tall figure, her sharp but gentle eyes, her warning about something waking in the land. Ethan was a man who took words seriously, especially when they came from someone who clearly understood the land better than anyone he knew. He took Dusty to the stable, brushed him down, and gave him water. Dusty was uneasy, shaking his head and stomping his hooves. Ethan patted his neck softly. "It's all right, boy. We're home now," he murmured. But Dusty didn't calm down easily. Animals always sensed things before people did, and Ethan knew that if his horse was scared, something truly unusual was happening. The sky darkened slowly, stars appearing one by one. The desert night was always colder than people expected. Ethan lit a small lantern and sat at his worn-out wooden table. His dinner remained untouched as he stared into the flame, lost in thought. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "Old things wake up." He didn't know what she meant, but the hills had always held mysteries. Many old tribes believed the land itself had a spirit that mountains remembered, rivers whispered, and storms stirred things hidden beneath the earth. Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He was tired, but sleep felt impossible. Something in him wanted to go back and find the girl, to understand what she knew, but she told him not to follow the tracks again. He wasn't afraid of danger. He was afraid of not understanding it. As he sat there thinking, a soft rumble shook the ground. It was faint, but enough to make the lantern flicker. Ethan stood up quickly. His heart thumped in his chest. Was it an earthquake? No, he had lived in this land for years. And this felt different. It was almost like a deep growl from far below the earth. Dusty neighed from the stable, loud and frightened. Ethan grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The air felt strange, as if the wind held a warning. He scanned the darkness. Everything looked still. Yet something felt alive, something he couldn't see. He listened carefully. Silence. But the kind of silence that comes before something big. The next morning arrived, but the uneasy feeling did not leave. Ethan walked along his fence line, checking for damage. To his surprise, he found something he hadn't seen before: more large footprints. They were similar in size to the girl's, but these were different. The shape was unusual. The steps deeper, heavier. Whatever made them was bigger than even her. Ethan crouched down, touching the edge of one print. It was fresh made that morning, or the night before. He looked toward the hills. The tracks were heading in that direction, but not toward the place he had met the girl. They curved around, as if circling the ranch, then led away. Someone or something had come close. He felt a chill run down his spine. The girl knew something was coming. She warned him. Was this what she meant? Ethan saddled Dusty again, even though the horse shook nervously. He patted his neck. I know you don't like it. But we can't stay blind. He followed the tracks carefully, staying alert. The morning sun was bright, but the heaviness in the air made the world feel dimmer. Birds were quiet, and even the wind moved slowly, almost cautiously. After a long ride, Ethan reached a narrow valley between two tall cliffs. The tracks ended there. The valley was quiet. Strangely so. Ethan stepped down from his horse and walked a little farther. He felt the ground vibrate, just slightly like a heartbeat, under the soil. Then he heard a branch snap behind him. Ethan spun around, hand reaching for the small knife at his belt. But he froze when he saw her again. The giant Apache girl stepped from behind a boulder, her expression serious. She looked more alert than the day before, almost worried. The wind blew her long hair around her face, but she didn't seem to notice. You came again, she said, her calm voice now holding a hint of disappointment. Ethan straightened. Something came near my ranch last night. I saw the tracks. I had to know what it was. The girl looked at the ground. You should have stayed away. Ethan frowned. Why won't you tell me what's happening? She met his eyes, and for a moment, he saw the weight she carried. She wasn't just protecting her land, she was carrying knowledge passed down through generations. There is something old in these hills, she said softly. Something that sleeps until the land is disturbed. The storm woke it. Ethan listened closely. He didn't interrupt. The girl continued. My people call it Nahi-Tose, the Watcher of the Stone. It isn't a beast or an animal. It is part of the land. When storms break the rocks and change the ground, it rises to see what has changed. Ethan tried to understand. Is it dangerous? The girl nodded slowly. It can be. Not because it is angry, but because it is strong and blind. It moves like a giant shadow. It follows movement, sound, and the warmth of life. She looked at him seriously. If it came near your ranch, it sensed something living. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest. So it wasn't after me? No, she said softly. It does not think the way we do. But it can crush anything in its path if frightened. Ethan glanced toward the hills. Can it be stopped? The girl stepped closer, her tall figure towering gently over him. It can be guided back into the deep caves where it sleeps, but I cannot do it alone. I have watched it since last night. It roams wide, searching for calm ground. Ethan understood what she was saying. You want my help? The girl hesitated. I do not wish to involve you, but the ranch lies in its path. If we don't act, your home will fall. Ethan took a slow breath. He had lived peacefully for years, avoiding conflict, avoiding unnecessary risks. But this time, the risk was at his doorstep, and the girl, strong, wise, and strangely gentle, needed help. I'll help, he said firmly. The girl observed him for a moment, as if deciding whether he truly meant it. Then she nodded. Very well. My name is Ayana. She paused. If we work together, we may be able to lead the Watcher back to the deep land. Ethan gave a small smile. I'm Ethan. She didn't smile back, but her eyes softened just a little. Ayana turned and motioned for him to follow. Come. I will show you where it rests now. They walked through the narrow valley, their footsteps echoing quietly. Ayana moved with confidence, each step purposeful. Ethan followed closely, feeling both alert and strangely calm in her presence. After about an hour, They reached a massive rocky formation, a deep split in the earth like a mouth opened by time. A cold wind blew out from it. Ayanna lifted her hand. "It is inside," she whispered. Ethan peered into the darkness. He couldn't see anything, but he felt it, a presence. Heavy and ancient. Breathing slowly, Ayanna knelt down and placed her hand on the ground. Her fingers traced a symbol in the dust, a spiral shape. Ethan watched quietly, unsure what she was doing. "My ancestors taught us how to calm the Watcher," she explained. "But the land has changed. It is restless." Suddenly, the ground shook stronger this time. Stones rolled down the cliffs, and Dusty neighed in fear. Ethan grabbed his reins. Ayanna stood quickly. "It wakes. We must move." The rumbling grew louder. A deep, echoing sound filled the valley, like stone grinding against stone. Ethan's heart pounded as he backed away. Ayanna looked at him. "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, do not run. Running will draw it out." Ethan nodded, though fear tightened his throat. The air trembled, the earth shook, and deep inside the dark cave, something enormous began to rise. This was the danger she warned him about. This was what the storm had awakened. And now, both Ethan and Ayanna would have to face it together. A deep rumble rolled out of the cave like thunder trapped under the earth. Ethan felt the vibration rise through the soles of his boots and spread up his legs. Dusty pulled at the reins nervously, swinging his head from side to side, but Ethan held on tightly. He knew one sudden move could make things worse. Ayanna stood tall in front of him, her feet planted firmly in the rocky ground. Her eyes were fixed on the darkness inside the cave. She seemed calm, but Ethan could see the tightness in her jaw, the way her chest rose and fell in careful breaths. She was preparing herself. The rumbling grew louder. Pebbles danced across the ground. A cold wind pushed out from the cave. Not like normal air, but more like a breath from something giant, waking after a long sleep. Then, slowly, a shape began to move inside the shadows. Ethan held his breath. At first, he only saw the outline, a massive form, larger than anything he had ever seen. It wasn't shaped like an animal he knew. It seemed to be made of earth itself. When it stepped forward, the ground shuddered again. Ayanna lifted her hand slightly, signaling Ethan to stay quiet, stay steady. When the creature finally stepped into the morning light, Ethan felt his heart freeze. It looked like a being sculpted out of stone and soil. Its body was huge, almost as tall as the cliffs around them. Its legs were thick like tree trunks, and its arms looked like heavy boulders. Glowing lines ran along its body, like cracks filled with soft golden light. Its face was broad and expressionless, with eyes that shone faintly as if lit from deep within. It took one slow step, then another. Each movement made the ground tremble. Ayanna's voice came out firm but quiet. "Do not move suddenly. Do not speak loudly. It senses fear." "I think the months was ups." Ethan swallowed and nodded. He wasn't sure if he could hide his fear, but he trusted her. The creature, the Watcher of the Stone, lifted its head slightly, as if smelling the air or sensing heat. It didn't seem angry. It seemed lost, confused, like someone waking in a place that had changed too much. Ayanna stepped forward slowly, raising both hands in a calm gesture. The creature stopped, its glowing eyes turning toward her. Ethan felt its weight through the air, not just physically but almost emotionally, like the presence of something ancient, something that had seen times long before humans built homes or fences. Ayanna spoke again, her voice steady. "The land has changed after the storm. You woke too early. Let us guide you back." The creature tilted its head slightly, as if listening. Then, with surprising gentleness, it lowered itself onto its knees. The cliffs around them echoed with the soft grinding of stone. Ethan couldn't believe what he was seeing. "It's listening," he whispered. Ayanna nodded, but did not look away from the giant. "It knows my people's voice," she said, "but it is restless. We must take it to the deeper caves where the earth still feels calm." She turned her head slightly toward Ethan. "You will walk beside me. Your presence will help guide the path." Ethan blinked. "Me? Why me?" "Because it sensed your ranch last night," she said. "It knows you, and now it must learn you are not a threat." Ethan felt the weight of the responsibility settle on him. He took a deep breath and stepped forward slowly, careful not to startle the creature. Dusty snorted loudly. But the horse stayed behind as Ethan moved closer to Ayanna. Ayanna began walking, tracing a slow circle in the air with her hand. The creature rose to its feet again, towering over them. Ethan could feel the ground shift under its weight. They walked side by side, Ayanna on one side of the giant, Ethan on the other, keeping their pace slow and steady. It felt like guiding a mountain that had suddenly decided to walk. The path was narrow, winding between cliffs and large boulders. Ayanna chose each step with care. Ethan noticed something different about her now. She moved not just with confidence but with a kind of grace that came from understanding the land deeply. She knew where the rocks were stable, where the ground was softer, and which direction would keep the giant creature calm. After what felt like a long time, they reached a wider valley. Here the ground was smoother, and the air felt cooler. The creature paused, as if sensing the change. It let out a low, deep sound that echoed far across the hills. Ayanna placed her hand on the ground again. "This is good. The earth is calm here, but the deepest caves lie beyond." Ethan looked around. "Is it safe for us to go farther?" Ayanna stood. "It will be if we stay close and move with care." She turned toward Ethan, her tall figure casting a long shadow over the sandy ground. "The Watcher follows sound and warmth. It sees us not as people but as lights. If one of us breaks away or runs, it may follow too quickly and lose balance." Ethan nodded. "I won't run." They continued onward. The giant followed, its footsteps leaving deep impressions in the earth. Birds that had been hiding in the cliffs finally flew out in startled bursts, circling above before disappearing into the clear sky. As they walked, Ayanna began telling Ethan things he had never heard before, ancient stories of her people, passed down for generations. She spoke quietly, her voice soft but steady. "We believe the land holds memories," she said. "Long ago, before there were villages or ranches, the earth itself moved with life. These beings were the protectors. They rested in deep caverns, watching silently over the land." Ethan listened carefully. "Why did they sleep?" "They were only needed in times of great change," she replied. "But as the world changed with people building and settling, the land settled too. The Watchers went into deep rest. Only storms or strong shifts can wake them. And the storm shook the ground enough to wake this one," Ethan said. Ayanna nodded. "Yes. And now? We guide it back." Hours passed as they led the creature through the valleys. Every so often, the giant paused, touching the ground with its massive hand, as if feeling the land's heartbeat. Ayanna would wait patiently until it stood again. By late afternoon, they reached a massive opening in the rocks, a deep cave marked by ancient carvings. Ethan stared in awe. The symbols were old, older than any writing he knew. Carved deep into the stone. "This is the place," Ayanna whispered. "Here the earth is strongest." The giant stopped in front of the entrance. A low hum vibrated from its chest, echoing softly inside the cave. Ayanna closed her eyes and began to hum too, a soft, steady tone that blended with the creature's sound. It was a gentle melody, like a lullaby of the earth. Ethan felt goosebumps rise along his arms. The air itself seemed to calm. Slowly, the giant lowered itself onto one knee, then onto the ground. It placed both hands flat on the earth. The glowing lines on its body dimmed slightly, pulsing slower and slower. Ayanna's hum softened until it faded. The Watcher lowered its head to the ground, folding itself gently. Its body began to settle, sinking deeper into the cave floor, as if returning to the earth from which it came. Finally, the glowing faded completely. The Watcher of the Stone had returned to rest. Ayanna let out a long breath and stepped back. Ethan felt his chest loosen as well, realizing how tightly he had been holding in his fear. "It is done," Ayanna whispered. Ethan looked at her with deep respect. You saved my home. You saved the land. Ayana shook her head. We saved it. Together. They stood there in quiet silence, watching the peaceful cave. The sun lowered behind the hills, casting golden light across the rocky walls. Ethan finally spoke. What happens now? Ayana looked toward the horizon. Now the land will settle again, but it will remember what happened. And so must we. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood. Some events change a person forever, even if no one else sees them. As they began walking back toward the valley, Ethan realized something else. This journey had changed more than just his understanding of the land. It had changed the way he saw Ayana, and it had changed the way she saw him. The land was calm again, but their story was far from over. Ethan and Ayana walked away from the ancient cave as evening slowly covered the land. The sun dipped behind the tall cliffs, painting the sky in warm shades of orange, red, and purple. The wind grew cooler and softer, brushing against their faces like a gentle goodbye from the long day. After the powerful moments they had just lived through, the silence felt comforting, almost peaceful. For a long time, neither spoke. They simply walked side by side, their steps slow and steady. Ethan kept glancing toward Ayana, noticing the calm determination still visible in her face. Even after dealing with a creature as huge as the Watcher, she remained composed. But he also saw signs of tiredness in her eyes. She had carried a great responsibility, and now that the danger had passed, the weight of it seemed to rest on her shoulders. Ethan finally broke the silence. You were incredibly brave today, he said softly. Ayana didn't look at him right away. She continued walking a few steps before she answered. I only did what my ancestors taught me. It was not bravery. It was duty. Ethan shook his head lightly. Duty or not, what you did was something very few people could ever do. I cast 5. Ayana gave a small, thoughtful smile. And what you did was something even fewer would dare to do. You followed me into danger without knowing if you would return. Ethan shrugged, a little embarrassed. I couldn't just stay home while something that big roamed the land. And you asked for help. I wasn't going to let you face it alone. Ayana stopped walking. She turned to face him fully. Her tall figure formed a silhouette against the colorful sky, and her dark hair flowed gently with the wind. You didn't have to help, she said. But you trusted me. Most people fear what they don't understand. Ethan met her eyes. Well, maybe I'm different. Ayana's eyes softened. Yes, she said quietly. You are. They continued walking. Soon they reached a small stream that reflected the fading daylight. The water shimmered as it flowed gently between smooth stones. Ayana knelt by the stream and cupped water in her hands. Drinking slowly, Ethan knelt beside her and did the same, feeling the cool water wash away some of the exhaustion he hadn't even realized he carried. Ayana looked at the stream thoughtfully. Water always finds its path, she said, no matter how many stones lie in its way. Ethan smiled. Is that another teaching from your people? She nodded. Yes. They say a person should be like water, gentle but strong, calm but determined, able to move around obstacles without losing purpose. Ethan dipped his hand into the stream again. I think you already live like that. Ayana tilted her head slightly. Maybe. But the land is changing. I must learn more now. Ethan's curiosity grew. What do you mean? The storm was only the beginning, Ayana explained. When the earth shakes, it is not just rocks that move. Stories shift too. Paths change. The Watcher woke because something deep in the ground changed. Ethan felt a small tightening in his chest. Do you think more things might wake? Ayana stood up, looking toward the distant hills. I don't know. The land speaks in its own way. But we must listen carefully. Ethan stood as well. Then I'll listen with you. The breeze carried their footsteps as they left the stream and continued toward the edge of the hills. As night grew darker, the stars appeared one by one, then in clusters. The sky became a blanket of shimmering lights. Ayana looked at the stars with quiet admiration. My people believe each star is a memory of the earth. When someone protects the land, the sky remembers. Ethan gazed upward too. Then tonight, a new star should appear. Ayanna smiled at his words, though it was a soft and humble smile. She wasn't used to praise, and she didn't seek it. But Ethan could see that his words touched her. By the time they reached the valley entrance, it was fully night. The moon was rising bright, full, and glowing. The silver light made the land look different, almost magical. They stood where the path split, one direction leading to Ethan's ranch, the other deeper into the Apache lands. Ayanna turned to Ethan. "You should return home now." Ethan felt a small ache inside, knowing they were parting. "Will I see you again?" he asked quietly. Ayanna looked toward her path. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she spoke in her calm voice. "Our paths crossed for a reason. And the land still has more to say." She stepped closer, her tall presence warm rather than intimidating. "You walked into danger when others would have stayed behind. The land will remember that. And so will I." Ethan held her gaze. "If you ever need help again, I'll be there." Ayanna nodded slowly. "And if you ever need guidance, follow the footprints in the wind." He didn't fully understand the meaning of her last words, but they stayed with him. Ayanna stepped back, gave one final look, and then turned toward her path. She walked with long, graceful strides, disappearing into the moonlit hills like a spirit returning to her place. Ethan watched until she faded from sight. Only then did he turn toward home. The walk back to his ranch felt different than it had that morning. The land seemed more alive, peaceful, yet carrying hidden stories. Ethan thought of the Watcher resting again beneath the earth, of Ayanna's gentle strength, of the strange tracks near his ranch, and of the way the world felt like it had shifted. When he reached his ranch, Dusty neighed softly in greeting. Ethan stroked the horse's nose gently. "It's all right now," he whispered. "Everything's calm again." He stepped inside his small wooden house. The lantern still sat on the table, right where he left it. He lit it and sat down, feeling the quiet settle around him. But unlike the night before, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. It felt earned. He looked around the room, the walls, the tools, the simple furniture. Everything seemed the same, yet nothing felt quite the same anymore. He had seen too much, learned too much. The world outside his ranch was larger, older, and far more mysterious than he had ever imagined. Ethan leaned back in his chair and let out a long, calm breath. He thought of Ayanna, her strength, her wisdom, her calm presence. He wondered where she was at that moment, walking under the same moon, guided by knowledge he barely understood. He realized something important. He didn't feel alone anymore. The next morning, Ethan walked outside to greet the sunrise. The sky glowed with gentle colors. Birds sang lightly. The wind carried a peaceful quiet across the land. He checked the fences, fed Dusty, and walked through his fields. Everything was normal. Everything was stable. But something caught his eye, a single large footprint near the stream beside his ranch. Not from the Watcher, and not from an animal. It was Ayanna's. Ethan knelt beside it, smiling to himself. The track faced toward the hills, but another smaller track, half erased by wind, faced toward his ranch. She had visited quietly in the night. He stood up, his heart warm. He didn't know when he would see her again, but he knew their story wasn't over. The land had brought them together once, and it could do so again. As the morning sun climbed higher, Ethan looked across the open land. For the first time in a long while, he felt a deep sense of purpose, not just to care for his ranch but to understand the land the way Ayanna did. To listen to it. To respect it. To protect it. He took a slow breath and whispered to the wind, "I'll be ready." And the wind, gentle as ever, seemed to whisper back,